Hello and welcome everyone to God channel. I am Taklai as always, and today I am here to give you a bit of an update in terms of what is happening in Tigray and what the Ethiopian regime and the Eritrean regimes are getting up to with respect to Tigray as well. So I'm going to focus on three issues that I think are worth talking about. The first one is a meeting between representatives of the Tigray government and the Ethiopian regime that is reportedly happening in Nairobi. And it's a meeting that will continue until Christmas Day, if reports coming out of Nairobi are to be believed. So I am going to raise some points there, and I will also say a few words about the resumption of humanitarian services, or the lack of them thereof, to be more precise, in Tigray. And also I'm going to say a few words about an interesting development with respect to the UN human rights team of experts in Ethiopia. There has been a bit of a change in the team that we heard about today. So the meeting between the Tigrayan representatives and the Ethiopian representatives, as I said, is going to be 3 days long. So we will run until Friday, and from what I have been hearing, the main issue of contention or issue of discussion is going to be how to implement the agreement that they had agreed, or the agreement that they had signed in Pretoria and Nairobi more than a month ago. As all of you will be aware, almost none of the points that they agreed have been implemented. And the main reason for that is one of the preconditions, we could say, for the implementation of the other terms that they agreed is the withdrawal of Eritrean forces, or non-ENDF forces, as it was written in the agreement. And the Ethiopian regime, of course, as we all know, is in a bit of a pickle when it comes to the Eritrean forces, and that is for two reasons. The first reason is the Ethiopian regime, in its heart of hearts, doesn't want Eritrea to leave Tigray, because if Eritrea was to leave Tigray, it knows that it wouldn't be able to control and contain the Tigrayan forces. So deep down, of course, the regime wants Eritrea to remain in Tigray, doing everything that Eritrean forces have been doing, starting from plunder, looting, and killing, and destruction, and all the other atrocity crimes that they have been committing. So the Ethiopian regime think that is a very, very important thing that must continue to happen. That's the destruction of Tigray is a price worth paying if the presence of Eritreans means that the Tigrayan forces will remain contained and controlled. But of course, there is another problem, which is that the regime must appear, at the very least, to be honoring the terms of the agreement. And according to the terms of the agreement, Eritrea, because it's a non-ENDF force, must leave. And so it has the international observers to satisfy, on the other hand. So that is the problem that the regime has been trying to grapple with, trying to maneuver, is to find a workaround. So in one sense, it's not a difficult problem to solve for the Ethiopian regime, partly because it has a very sympathetic international community. All the partners, and especially the African Union, understand the position of the Ethiopian government, and they are, on the whole, as we all know, understanding and sympathetic. I think that would be the right description to the Ethiopian regime. So if the Ethiopian regime could find a plausible excuse or lie for Eritrea to remain in Tigray, they are more than willing to accept. So really, more than forcing Eritrea to leave Tigray, the task, I think, or the assignment for the Ethiopian regime is to manufacture something that is a good enough excuse for its international partners. And if you have been following what various Ethiopian officials have been saying on their social media accounts and other platforms, the excuse seems to be that if the Tigray forces were to disarm, if Eritrea doesn't have any sort of existential threat, which is what Eritrea has been saying, although Eritrea, as we all know, doesn't acknowledge that it is in Tigray, or it has a presence in Tigray. But anyways, the rationale for Eritrea, to the extent that they admit they have been involved in Tigray, is because they have existential threat, and that if the TPLF was to disarm, then they would leave. So various Ethiopian officials have been saying that one of the things that must happen is for the TPLF or for the TDF to totally disarm, and for the Ethiopian Defense Forces to be in control of the Tigray-Eritrea border, and then Eritrea won't have any reason to want to remain in Tigray. So that is the line that they have been trying to push, but because they have signed or they have agreed that Eritrean forces will concurrently leave, so concurrently to the Tigray Defense Forces disarming, they haven't quite found out the scheme or the formula for implementing that. So that would be one of the issues that I presume, again, I don't really have any evidence here, but that would be one of the kind of sticking points in Nairobi, and that would be one of the issues that they will try to iron out, because the Tigrayan government, and I think you could say the entire Tigray establishment, has been very, very consistent in demanding that the first thing that must happen before any of the other terms of agreement is for Eritrea to leave, and for the Amhara forces who continue to occupy western and southern Tigray, large parts of southern Tigray at any rate, for them to leave. That is kind of what the first thing that must happen before other things could be discussed. And for its part, the Tigray government has made its forces demobilize. That's one of the words that they have been used. So they have disengaged and demobilized. I'm not sure about how much they have disarmed, but they have demobilized. So they have moved away from the war fronts. So again, because there is no independent reporting that comes out of Tigray, we can't for sure say what is happening. But the Tigray government has been saying that it has honored its part of the agreement, and that is the Ethiopian government that is dragging its feet when it comes to those agreements. And you remember that 2 or 3 days ago, the Tigrayan government, it wasn't in the name of the government, but at the very least, the president issued a remark blaming the Ethiopian government of failing, or of having failed to honor the terms of the agreement. And he was very specific. He said that Ethiopian government hasn't pushed for Eritrea to leave. So that would be one of the issues that they will discuss in Nairobi, and maybe by Saturday, by Christmas Day, or by maybe next week, we're going to know more about what they do. But another interesting thing in there is that the people who have been assigned to oversee the whole process, the AU and the IGAD. So these are two African bodies who we know are supportive of the Ethiopian regime, and I think the United States is also involved in some capacity. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Tigray government pushed for more involvement of the American government, given that the other two parties are pretty much extensions of the Ethiopian regime. So we will know about those aspects. So that is one issue that I presume will be discussed in Nairobi. But the other one is the issue of what they call contested areas. So in both the Pretoria and Nairobi agreement, it was stated that contested areas, and when they say contested areas, they mean huge parts of Western Tigray and huge parts of Southern Tigray. Those issues will be addressed following the Ethiopian constitution. And to many Tigrayans, and also it looks like to the Tigrayan government, that means that according to the constitution of the country, they belong to Tigray, and to the extent that there is some sort of disagreement as to which territory belongs to whom, that should be addressed following the constitution. There is a mechanism for addressing contested issues. That is the line that is being taken by the Tigrayan establishment. But of course, the Amhara establishment has a completely different view on that, and the Ethiopian government has been expectedly very quiet on that, because it doesn't want to commit into either view. Because if it committed to the Tigrayan view, then it would offend the Amharas, and if it committed to the Amhara view, then number one, it will be violating the terms of the agreement, and also I don't think it will care about offending Tigrayans, but that would happen as well. But most importantly, it would be against the spirit and the letter of the agreement. So we're going to know more about what they agree to do in terms of addressing those contested areas. But that is one of the very, very sticking point, and we're going to know more by Saturday about that as well. So those will be the two issues that I expect to be ironed out in Nairobi over the next 3 days, and I think it's going to be closed door meetings, so I don't think we're going to get some kind of live commentary and updates from reporters, but they do find a way of leaking some important information. So I would say keep an eye for that. Interesting developments might happen. Although my honest view is that the Ethiopian regime is not a good faith player in this, and regardless of what they agree to do in Nairobi, is going to find a way to find an excuse to lie, to dissemble, to kick the can down the road, as they say. One thing that it wouldn't do is it wouldn't engage the Tigrayans in good faith and try to find an honest solution to whatever problems the Tigrayans raise, because it's the kind of regime that it is. And I think every one of you listening to me would agree with that assessment, that the Ethiopian regime generally is not playing this in good faith, and anyways it's in the pocket of the Eritrean regime. And if Eritrea refuses to leave Tigray, which is likely going to be the case, the Ethiopian regime doesn't have any sort of leverage to force it to leave. And the US government seems to be very recalcitrant when it comes to this. It doesn't seem to be pushing for the agreement to be implemented. I think the consensus seems to me to be, as long as Tigray is contained, as long as it's not proving to be a trouble for the Ethiopian regime, they seem to be very happy with the fact that Tigray has been cut off from everything, and literally expelled from life. That's what's happened. And everyone seems to be, except for Tigrans, happy with that arrangement. So it was a bit longer than maybe you'd have wanted this to be, but that was the first issue that I thought I will give you a bit of an update for. And the next one is the resumption of services to Tigray. So those of you who have read the agreement both in Pretoria and in Nairobi, one of the key elements of the agreement was that the Ethiopian regime would immediately allow unfettered humanitarian access to Tigray and resume services that had been shut down in Tigray for the past 2 years. So that includes banking and telecommunication and internet and other, under telecommunications, and all other services that have been terminated. But of course, that hasn't happened until today, and we know why that hasn't happened. We know why that hasn't happened because starvation and the withholding of services remains to be an integral part of the weapon against Tigray. So it's not a surprise, but because the Ethiopian regime wants to be seen to be doing something right in those regards, there has been a very, very interesting development the past couple of days. And that is that by appearing to open some services for a couple of hours, for instance, the regime has been expecting that it would get the kind of positive coverage that it so craves, and that would do the job as far as appeasing the international observers is concerned. And that's exactly what has been happening. And I will mention two things, two tricks that the regime has used the past 2 days. One was it opened banking services in ICHREE, but the only services that were opened, this is very sick and interesting in a negative sense, were one, international transfer, and two, a deposit. Now we know that people in Tigray are not in a position to deposit money, not least because they don't have money, but also they don't trust the banking system. So no one in Tigray who has cash is going to want to deposit anyways, right? The other service available is of course for people in the diaspora, for Tigrayans in the diaspora who are desperate to help their beloved ones in Tigray to send money. And of course, the reason the regime wants that service, I say service, but I don't think it's a service. It's a way for exploiting Tigrayans actually. So for people from outside to send hard currency, and that would be used as a source of income for the regime. But of course, nothing is going to go to actual Tigrayans in Tigray. So by doing this, the regime actually is getting two things. One, it gets the kind of positive coverage, and it has been reported on Al Jazeera of all places. And the Al Jazeera has been on balance a fair reporter on issues that are pertaining to Tigray. They have generally been more factually correct, and they have shown an interest to be nuanced and to be careful in how they report and in what they report. But on this one, they were sold on the trick that banking services have resumed, when in fact they haven't resumed. The only thing that has been opened is transfer, and the reason the regime made that available is for Tigrayans and the diaspora to send money, and so for the regime to get dollars. And that was that. And at any rate, those services were available in towns that they control, not in towns that the Tigrayans control. And the other thing that happened is there has been a trickle of service in terms of text messaging services, SMS services, for instance, or SMS, I should say. in I think in Adwa and Aksum and ICHREE. But of course, because reporters are not interested in being nuanced, it has been reported as though telecommunications have resumed. So that is an interesting trick and game that the regime has been playing by appearing to have resumed service to get the positive coverage. That would mean something in terms of ticking the boxes of the agreement. So that is the second update that I wanted you to I wanted to bring it to. Well, I want to update you on, and the third one actually is something that happened today, and it came out of nowhere, and it is that the commissioner, the Kenyan lady who was the commissioner of the UN body for what was called UN body for of human rights experts on Ethiopia. I could be wrong in terms of the name, but anyway, the commissioner resigned, and another one from Tanzania was appointed as the new commissioner. Now, we're not told why she resigned. So this is the second resignation. We know that the first one was from I think it was from she was from, if I'm not mistaken, I think from Mali, and she resigned, and the reason was never given. And now the new one, against whom the Ethiopian regime has been campaigning, has resigned, and they have appointed a third one, and no reason has been given as to why. I have my reasons, I have my suspicions. I think generally there's a palpable feeling among the commission that they haven't been supported to do their job, and that they have been attacked by the Ethiopian regime without anyone to protect and defend them. And anyways, they haven't been given access to go to Tigray and do their job. So maybe she resigned out of protest to this unfair treatment, and to the fact that the Ethiopian regime has imposed some sort of obstruction. So that could be the reason why she resigned. But anyway, it's not stated why, and it's very, very strange, because normally when a high-ranking UN official resigns, reason is ordinarily given, but not in this case. But I thought that was an important development, and so these are updates in terms of Tigray and Ethiopia. But like I said earlier, I think that the next 3 days will be interesting in terms of what comes out of Nairobi. So that was that for today. Thanks for the listen, and whenever there is another maybe significant development, I am going to come back and update you. And but until then, have a wonderful time, and to those of you who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and bye bye.